Scientists have just opened samples from the moon that had been sealed for over 50 years. Brought back to Earth by the Apollo 17 astronauts, they had remained sealed at NASA until now. But when the researchers were finally allowed to open the samples, they could hardly believe their eyes. Today, we're going to take a look at what the researchers discovered in these mysterious lunar samples after half a century, and why these findings could completely change our understanding of the moon. So make sure to stick around until the end. A warm welcome to you all. Just imagine being allowed to open a Christmas present you've been looking forward to for ages, only 53 years later. That's exactly what happened to the NASA researchers. But of course, there's no reason to wait that long to subscribe to this channel. So go ahead and follow me. Subscribing doesn't cost anything. You'll never miss another fascinating video, and you'll be helping me out a lot. And if you've already subscribed, giving the video a thumbs up helps me a lot. Maybe we'll hit 5,000 likes. The YouTube algorithm loves that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Our story today begins in December 1972, when the crew of Apollo 17 became the last humans to leave the moon to date. They brought back with them almost 120 kilograms of moon rock from a very special region. Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, incidentally the first and so far only trained scientist on the moon, had collected these samples from the so-called light mantle, a mysterious several kilometer long and unusually bright strip of rock at the foot of the so-called Southern Massif. But here's the genius part. The NASA officials were really thinking long-term back then. Instead of examining all the samples right away, they decided to lock away some of the most valuable specimens for a time when technology would be advanced enough to extract even more information from them. A gift to the future, so to speak. Giulia Magnarini from the National History Museum in London explains, NASA was really forward-thinking during the Apollo mission and set aside some samples. They were stored so that they could be examined with more advanced technology and new scientific approaches that had not even been conceived at the time.
By the way, this raises an interesting philosophical question. The paradox of procrastination describes the situation in which it always seems more rational to wait even longer.
Because future technology, information, or conditions will be better. However, if you follow this logic consistently, you can never act, because the ideal moment will never be reached.
So next time someone accuses you of being lazy, just tell them you're simply embracing the paradox of procrastination. Well, in any case, the time to examine the samples has finally arrived. As part of the ANSWER program, Apollo Next Generation Sample Analysis, researchers have finally been granted permission to open these sealed treasures. And what they discover will blow you away. Yes, first of all, let's talk about the technology. In 1972, the best scanners in the world were about as pixelated as a Game Boy game. Today, with micro CT scanners, we can look inside samples in incredible detail without destroying them.
The resolution is so high that you can see details that are smaller than the thickness of a human hair. When the samples were originally brought back, scanning technology was not as detailed. Now, with micro CT scans, we have medical images that allow us to examine these samples in minute detail. Comma explains Magnarini, the results completely exceeded the scientists' expectations. In the upper 5 centimeters of the sample, they found virtually no large rock fragments. This is a clear sign that this layer has been plowed up by micrometeorite impacts and space weathering over millions of years. It's like a natural time capsule that shows us how the moon's regolith is being altered by constant bombardment from space.
By the way, regolith is not a Finnish black metal band, although it would be a great name for one. It's actually the technical term for lunar dust. But the truly spectacular part of the sample analysis is yet to come. Deeper in the sample, the researchers discover something completely unexpected. Hundreds of so-called classed cortex aggregates. These are rock fragments surrounded by a ring of finer particles. At first it might sound boring, but it isn't. These structures only form under very specific conditions, when rock flows like a liquid. The rock fragments roll and slide around, while the finest particles stick to them due to electrostatic forces, forming these characteristic rings. It's essentially the fingerprint of a granular flow.
Giulia Magnarini continues, the clasts tell us a lot about the process of a landslide and how the material in it was transported. We saw that the finer materials surrounding the clasts in the core came from the clast itself and not from the surrounding debris. This suggests that the clasts broke apart and helped the landslide flow more like a liquid. This is a revolution in our understanding of the light mantle until now. It was completely unclear how this gigantic landslide on the moon came about, and above all, why it flowed so far. 5 kilometers is actually far too much for a landslide on a celestial body without an atmosphere. Normally, something like this would come to a halt after a few hundred meters.
The new findings show that light mantle was not an ordinary landslide, but rather a granular flow, a kind of dry mudslide made of lunar rock. The finest particles acted like a lubricant, allowing the entire mass to flow much farther than would initially seem physically plausible.
But where did the landslide come from in the first place? The most likely theory leads us to one of the most famous lunar craters, Tycho, named after the 16th century astronomer Tycho Brahe.
By the way, his beard was preserved after his death and could still be seen at the National Museum in Prague until 1989. Every beard dreams of such fame.
This 85-kilometer crater was formed about 100 million years ago by the impact of a massive asteroid. Millions of tons of material were hurled through space, and some of it apparently landed on the southern massif, triggering the landslide that formed the light mantle. It has been suggested that some of the material ejected by the formation of the Tycho crater may have hit the south massif. This could have triggered the landslide that ultimately formed the light mantle. Comma explains Giulia Magnarini. Just imagine. An asteroid strikes the moon hundreds of kilometers away, hurling chunks of rock through the vacuum of space, which then hit a mountain at cosmic speed and trigger a massive avalanche.
Science fiction couldn't have invented anything more spectacular. The discovery also shows how clever the Apollo planners were. The technology of 1972 would never have been able to resolve these tiny structures.
Only today's high-performance scanners make it possible to unlock the secrets that have been slumbering in these samples for 50 years. But the ANGSA program is far from over. More sealed samples are waiting to be opened, and each one could hold new surprises.
It's a bit like a treasure chest that the Apollo astronauts left behind for us. Only now we have the right tools to open it. But I can already hear some naysayers saying,
"So what? What's the point? Boring."
The insights from these 50-year-old moon samples have very practical significance for the future.
Because hopefully, humans will soon return to the moon. As part of the Artemis program, NASA plans to land astronauts on the moon's surface again within this decade. This time, however, it won't just be for a short visit, but to stay there and establish a permanent base. Knowledge about the granular flows on the moon will help us find safe landing sites and better assess the geological risks, because no one wants to set up their lunar base in an area where, statistically speaking, there is a risk of massive regolith avalanches.
Well, who knows what secrets are still slumbering in the remaining samples. I'll keep you updated on any further developments. So make sure to subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss out, and don't forget to give a thumbs up so we can hit 5,000 likes. And speaking of spectacular discoveries,
scientists have just discovered a new type of star that rewrites the history of the Big Bang and is giving researchers truly sleepless nights. We're talking about so-called dark stars. If you want an absolute cosmic mind blow, then travel with me to these dark giants and just click on the video displayed at the top right. It's really super exciting, and if you click at the bottom right, you'll find another video about space and science as always. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, folks.